an amazing solar system designed by one of the early pioneers of the electric car industry that left world-renowned engineers in awe. He managed to implement energy principles that apply to all electric cars into an incredible device capable of compensating the 85% solar energy loss conventional solar panels have. This one-of-a-kind idea changed the course of the solar industry and has helped ever since countless people slash their monthly electricity bills by more than half. I'm talking about a simple device that can be used by any family around the world and help them power up any kind of household appliances, from lamps and toasters to electricity hogs like refrigerators and AC units. It's called DIY Dish System, and it saved me a ton of money. Not to mention that it's completely weatherproof. You can take it with you when you go camping because you can fold it in minutes, or you can even power up remote cabins so high up in the mountains you'd be crazy to even think about it. Unlike conventional portable generators, there are no fumes, and you don't even have to spend hundreds of dollars on fuel. It even works during the night or when it's cloudy outside. It's basically a set and forget silent device that's so easy to build it doesn't even require strength or electric school. And just like that, you can say goodbye to high electricity bills. Stick around and you'll discover the secret to becoming energy independent with a small and versatile device that has almost no limit to how you can use it. Now, I'm sure your BS radar is already going like crazy. Yet what I'm about to tell you will completely change your perspective on electricity consumption to your bones. I'm sure you're already intrigued and you want to know all about how this system works. Honestly, it's like nothing you've ever seen, and in a few minutes from now, you'll be outraged you ever paid a single cent to Big Electric. So, you absolutely need to watch this short presentation today while it's still up. I don't know how much longer I'll have this free presentation online. So, watch this right now while you still can. Before we continue, let me tell you who I am and how it all started. As I mentioned before, my name is Daniel Scott. I'm a 52-year-old math teacher in Vineland, New Jersey. Folks who live out here know that high energy bills are somewhat of an issue, and we've been fighting them for years. And we've never liked paying through our noses for simple things that everybody should afford, like using the electric appliances without restriction. However, we simply settle, thinking that's the economy, or maybe it'll be better next year, month after month, struggling not to fall behind on bills. All that until the winter of 2017, December 29th, Tuesday, the absolute worst day of my life. The news warned the population about the rising of the freezing waters of Maurice River, but we never had problems. We were miles from the river and we were safe. But this time, it was different. Around 7 p.m., news warned everybody in the area the river had risen like never before. After a few minutes, all the lights went out. I immediately thought it was a simple blackout. I went to check on my wife and 2 daughters. They were fine, for the moment. Maurice River had broken out of its bed and flooded the surroundings. It ripped down hundreds of power lines around our area, and we suddenly found ourselves without power. My wife and I discussed driving to my parents in Lexington, Kentucky, but we were looking at a 10-hour drive in the night. We decided to wait for the power to come back. Big mistake. The house was getting cold, and it was getting cold fast. Night came, and still no power. I tried calling the electric company on my cell phone to find out when power would be restored, but all I got was a pre-recorded message saying that they were aware of the problem and that it would be between 48 and 72 hours before the power would be back online. Quickly, the temperature in our house reached around 40 degrees. Around midnight, I went to check on my family, and what I saw made me freeze in my tracks. My wife and daughters were lying on the bed, embracing each other, shivering in cold, muffled in thick blankets. You can't imagine how I felt not being able to protect my family. I rushed and wrapped my arms around them as tight as I could in a futile attempt to give them what little body heat I had. And then my 5-year-old Lisa said in a shivering voice, "Daddy, I'm cold and I'm hungry. I wish we had warm soup." I immediately burst into tears. It was the most devastating moment of my life. I felt like my world collapsed. I felt powerless because there was nothing I could do to protect the ones I cared for. and I simply felt furious, outraged about the fact that I knew I was the only one to blame for getting in this situation, and worse, for getting my family in this dangerous situation. I was furious that I was completely dependent on the electric company to power my home, and furious about the fact that for so many years I let it slide and thought maybe it'll get better next year, while those money-sucking electricity mobsters bled me and my family dry. It was the moment I realized I was at the end of my rope. I swore to myself I'd never put my wife and 2 daughters in a similar situation again. We left for my parents the very next day and came back after some time. I immediately began researching every single energy alternative I could find. I made it my sole purpose because leaving my family's well-being in the hands of the electric companies clearly wasn't an option anymore. Not only did their power lines always seem to go down in unexpected moments, but their prices had been smothering me for more than a decade. I imagined the CEOs going to the bank and cashing out my hard-earned money, maybe even laughing while doing it. So I immediately began to look at the problem from every angle to break the chains Big Electric had around my family. There had to be something. Frustrated, I created a list of what I felt my new source of energy should be. Cheap and easy to obtain or build, easy to move if I needed to bug out of town. It needed to be something that I can easily carry with me, can use a constant source of power to create energy. If there was no gas or wind, it should still work fine without interruption. So I considered buying a heavy-duty generator. It's certainly a reliable source of power, so I looked pretty much into this option. However, when I started to consider the costs, I realized I was looking at a minimum $1,000 investment to get a really high-quality generator, not to mention the fuel usage, and with the fluctuating gas prices, try powering your home full-time with a generator. You'd need to use about 90 gallons of gas per month and at a cost of around $250 or more to do it. Plus, it's not like I wanted to have a 90-gallon bomb around my family and house. So, this option was off the list. Next, I considered using solar energy. I've heard the solar industry boomed over the last years, and solar panels really can be effective. So, when I looked more into this option, I realized the costs were astronomical. Installing professional panels would have cost me an easy $15,000, and I certainly didn't have that money to invest. Plus, I did some research on the subject, and I found out that such kits rarely produce even 20% of the energy advertised. So, I only had one option. If I wanted to make sure my family never goes through such an experience again, I had to create my own solution. It had to be something cheap and fast and easy to build because I definitely didn't have any technical skills to build complicated devices. Being a teacher doesn't really offer those kinds of skills. So I started looking into every other solution that could bring me the security for my family. Many sleepless nights passed, and I was getting tired of surfing the internet for a simple solution. Yet one day, Kate, my wife, reminded me about my late Uncle Jack and his research in the energy field. Unfortunately, he recently passed away. He worked for an electric car company as a pioneer in his field. His life goal was to save the planet and offer his children a better life. As a professional researcher in this domain, he had the resources he needed to do it. And setting his goal to help humankind, as he said, he dedicated his life to discovering new technology. And he did thorough research. I remembered him telling me how electric eels can be used to produce huge amounts of energy. And maybe that sounds a bit strange, but there are some fish farms that are completely energy independent. However, that wasn't the solution for electric cars. And clearly it wasn't for me either. The investment was too big, and I certainly wasn't going to take care of who knows how many eels year-round. Not to mention the danger I was putting my family in. So while this option was off the table, I knew there had to be a solution out there. And that's when I remembered about the incredible technology that he pioneered. He told me about the incredible regenerative braking principle that is still being used in today's electric cars and how he used it to improve solar panels. Everybody, including the top engineers at the company, was shocked to see how easy the principle was. That very moment I realized the answer I was looking for was in front of my eyes. You're probably thinking that there's no way such a simple thing like the regenerative braking process could hold the key to energy independence. But the idea was actually brilliant. Let me explain the working principle as I later discovered it. Starting from the ingenious design of the electric car that uses every last source of power and every watt the car can produce when driving down the road, Jack thought about recovering some of the lost energy from the braking system when the wheels were spinning while braking. He thought, they produce energy, why not capture it? And so he did. After implementing this idea into electric cars and seeing how successful it was, Jack took it one step further. He thought of applying the same principle on solar panels to make them more efficient. So he designed a system to focus the sun waves in one spot to increase the overall power output. And the most effective way to do this was to use the principle of the satellite dish. That way he would capture the waves more efficiently, even those that would be lost in the process. Not to mention the space he was saving by rearranging the solar panels at converging angles. That's the real secret. What you may not realize, however, is just how much energy such a principle can produce. The true secret of this energy is that it is so simple to obtain. And the fundamentals are so easy, yet few know this secret, and it is rarely used. So, if properly applied, it can produce insane amounts of energy. The system captures the sun waves that are generally lost, redirecting them and increasing the power of the panels. So basically, it's an efficient regenerative system. That was the solution for my problem. Without wasting a second, I took some time off and told my wife and daughters I was going to visit their aunt. I kissed them goodbye, and I swore myself I wouldn't come back without the solution. I went to Norman, Oklahoma, and talked with Amy, my late uncle's wife. She let me in my uncle's old study, and after many hours of going through dozens of projects, I found what I was looking for. I skimmed them over and realized that they held the key to take total control energy-wise. But what I didn't know exactly was how to capture this unique energy and how to build the device to meet my needs. I struggled to understand the plans for about a week when Amy suggested calling Jason Newman, my uncle's best friend who had worked with him. She told me he was one of the best engineers at the lab. I called and told him my story and asked if he could help me decipher the plans my uncle left. Being an enthusiast in this field, he agreed. However, he insisted to set some basic rules. The system had to be incredibly cheap to build. I was already over my budget with the research, the trip, and everything. It had to be very easy to build so that I could explain it to my wife and kids to build it if, God forbid, something were to happen to me. So we started working on this project together. As a guy who studied energy sources with my uncle, Jason had a pretty good idea of the science behind how to get the most energy with this principle, and the plans clearly showed that. The first models were made either too expensive or too complicated for me to build. We had some heated arguments, mainly because of me being so stubborn. I needed the device to be cheap and simple. In the end, after several attempts, we finally came up with a prototype that seemed to be what we were looking for. The design was brilliant. We only used a few solar panels, some wires, and an old car battery. Combined, these materials cost us around $200 at Home Depot. However, I'm sure we could have found the parts at a junkyard for free if we weren't in such a rush. But the most important part of it was that it was incredibly safe. No fire, no dangerous fumes released, so we had zero worry about creating a dangerous explosive reaction. You simply had to place the components in the correct position. And because of the ingenious way the device was designed, it generated an extraordinary amount of energy, which was then captured and converted into usable electricity, at the same time constantly being powered from the sun. Even more, the system was actually incredibly easy to hook up to any device, even if you're terrible at building stuff and you have trouble plugging in a DVD player to your TV. So after building the device, the next step was to test it out to see if it really worked as well as we thought it would. We connected the car battery to it, and we just couldn't believe our eyes. The system was capturing the beautiful and powerful yellow solar rays because of the brilliant design my uncle had come up with. All of that energy was immediately put to use, providing a steady, robust supply of electricity.